Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here in Nashville, Tennessee, covering the Army Aviation Association of America's annual conference and trade show, #1 gathering of U.S. Army aviation leaders from around the world, as well as Army aviation leaders from some of America's closest allies, here to talk technology, budget, strategy, and more with industry, thought leaders, as well as the media. Our coverage here is sponsored by Bell and Leonardo DRS, and we're honored to have with us one of those allied aviation leaders, French Army, Brigadier General Yves Bouillaud, who is the commander of the French Army Aviation School in Le Luc on the French Riviera. Sir, that's a pretty good place to be stationed.
I do confirm. Exactly.
Thanks so much for taking time with us, and also, I just wanted to express such sadness at the tragedy at Notre Dame, and just to tell you how everybody's emotion and feeling are just not only with the citizens of Paris, but also with all of France, because Notre Dame is not just a church for France, but really the world.
Thank you for your support, sir, and we are going also to build again this cathedral, and this is almost the heart of the country, so we will do that. Thank you for your support.
Yeah, it's an honor, and I think everybody is going to be contributing in their own way to help make that possible, and to be there to see this great cathedral again. So let's talk strategy. I think for our audience who's not as familiar with French strategy and doctrine, but also the role of French Army aviation. I mean, you have 300 helicopters, significant capability, not just in a European context, but a global context, and obviously integral to French operations around the world, whether in Syria, whether in Afghanistan, whether in Africa and elsewhere in the world. Talk to us a little bit about the strategic context for France, but also French Army aviation.
Yes, sir. So I would say we have, for the military system, for the defense system, we have 3 missions. So the first mission is to maintain the independence of the country. The second mission is to contribute to peace in the world. And the third, mission is mainly to protect our citizens within the country and also abroad. With regard to our commitments abroad, I would say we are committed. We have been committed for more than 30 years now across the world, and our aviation assets are permanently committed. We are the first battlefield operating system deployed abroad. At this stage, we can say that the context of the strategic situation is evolving quickly. We can see a lot of threats, in the world. And our role is mainly to stabilize, the different regions around Europe, but also to contribute to the collective defense of NATO if this is needed. With regard to our commitments, I would say that Army Aviation, based on the lessons learned we can say that we are an expeditionary force. We have proved for 20 years that we are able to deploy quickly. We are a first entry force. And we have also a combination also of a forward deployed elements. So this is very useful. And for example, when we deployed in 2013 in Mali, this was a very key asset to be able to combine, first forward deployed elements, and second, units sent from home station.
And tell us, you said about it's a challenging operating environment. On the one hand, we have to continue executing missions as you do all across Africa. The Syria mission is an ongoing mission. At the same time, we have to prepare for great power competition. That's one of the big focuses here. All eyes are on Russia, for example. I know France participates in the air policing mission, for example, with the Rafale and Mirage aircraft. At the same time, China is a concern, and increasingly France is building up its presence. France is a Pacific power as well, but also participates in freedom of navigation exercises, for example, on the part of the French Navy, to assert international rules as China seeks to become more assertive. As you look at both the high-intensity battlefield of the future, but also contingency, the kind of counterinsurgency operations, how do you think that the French Army and French Army aviation has to adapt to operate in much, much more contested environments in the future?
So I would say for the future, it's clear that we are going to continue three types of missions. So the first one is about coin and counterterrorism operations. So this is clear that in the next 10 years, we are still going to continue this type of operation. Second, I would say we have to upgrade our skills with regard to high-intensity conflicts. We know that there is a competition of great powers, and for us, we have to be ready to participate in the collective defense within, for example, NATO. And third, of course, we have also to continue to support our civilian authorities in our country if needed. So these are the three lines, let's say, of operation we have in mind. With regard to our fleet, today we are trying to modernize our fleet. I would say 50% of the fleet is now belongs now to the fourth generation helicopter, and by 2022 we should have 2/3 of the fleet modernized. In order to be very effective on the terrain, I would say, with regard to, for example, high-intensity conflict, I would say we have to be very well nested with the Army, the new Army system, C3I system Scorpion, in order to make sure we can see the windows of opportunity quickly and to defeat our opponents. So I would say the first thing is mainly to make sure that we are fully integrated in the C3I of the Army, the new system Scorpion, and then afterward we have to develop a jointness, I would say, on many occasions within NATO, within the European Union, and abroad within coalition.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the specific modernization elements, right? Walk us through each one of these phases, because actually it's a rather, even if you go a couple of years behind into the 2030s, it is a comprehensive modernization program.
Exactly, so this is a comprehensive modernization for Army aviation, but also for the rest of the Army. With regard to Army aviation, I would say now we have almost the right number of Tiger helicopters, and we are going to modernize it. I would say this will be a midlife operation, I would say, beyond in the next few years. Second, we have still NH90s. I would say we are fielding in 10 aircraft this year, and our goal, I would say, is to make sure that we have a smooth transition between the legacy fleet and the modernized fleet. And with regard to modernization, I would say our effort is a digitalization of the C3I as well. It's not only about airframes, but also about, I would say, our ability to command in a very difficult environment our assets.
And one of the things that's actually been most important for the French Army, because the U.S. Army and the U.S. military tends to do things on a big scale unless it's on the special operations side, whereas the French Army prides itself on actually having a global footprint, but actually with very small pieces. And a key part of that is the pride to be able to deploy a few helicopters, but with very high reliability rates for long periods of time in austere conditions. Talk to us, are these new systems proving to be as reliable as, for example, a Gazelle that you could send into Africa for 2 weeks with a very, very small maintenance package and still deliver great effects with it?
Yeah, I would say this is one of the key lessons learned from our commitment to Mali since 2013. We have seen that the fourth generation aircraft are reliable within, I would say, an austere environment, and we have a very good rate of availability, and also these aircraft provide us with a clear advantage on the opponent, especially with regard to the endurance, with regard also to the ability to fight at night, even with, I would say, the deep night or black night, I would say, in theater. So we are able to fly all condition night over there. So I would say fourth generation helicopters provide us a clear advantage, and they are pretty reliable with regard to the conditions we meet over there. So.
Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a training question, because I think that folks don't fully maybe understand what the French training pipeline is like and where the schoolhouse fits into that. But the first thing I want to ask is, as you're making this transition to focus more on sort of traditional high-end warfighting skills. How much more training, cultural, and mental adaptation has to be made? Because your generation of officers served in this counterinsurgency period and gained a lot of experience. But if you went back to the officers that trained you, they were very much prepared to fight the Cold War battle, to operate, for example, without emissions and MCON alpha situations, much more on mission command as opposed to picking up a radio and calling, because modern battlefield radios now connect you globally. How would you gauge the progress you're making on that mental change to what is going to be an unprecedented high-intensity battlefield of the future when you look at Russians fielding hypersonics, Chinese doing the same sort of thing, air defense weapons that are much, much more sophisticated. You know, how are you grappling with that mental and cultural change into what is a very alien environment for a lot of today's aviators and soldiers?
Yeah, I think we can see two lines of effort there. The first thing, when we train people, it's mainly to train all missions when we are, I would say, within the school system, to train, I would say, COIN, but also high-intensity operations. And second, this is also a question of leadership. Of course, I would say, we know how we act in COIN operation, but we have adopted a new philosophy, training philosophy within the French army. We call that the warrior spirit. So this is to be able to use all assets we have, but also to be able to face adversity with regard to harsh conditions of commitment, such as in high-intensity conflicts. So we want to develop leaders on one side, but also people trained with regard to the different type of operation. And for this, I would say two things are useful. First, the simulation. The simulation tool for us is a vital tool in order to enable, I would say, the connection with the other battlefield operating system and to develop scenarios and so on with regard to high-intensity conflict. And the second thing is to have a training schedule which will include those, I would say, exercises, such as, for example, NATO exercises like Trident Juncture last year and so on. So we have to use a simulation and a LiveX, especially within a joint or a multinational arena, to make sure that we are ready to face the different commitments.
Let's go to the training curriculum. You're a very experienced aviator who has a lot of experience in many, many types of airplanes, whether the Gazelle or, so there was a reason why I mentioned the Gazelle, your old airplane, but EC-120s and almost every other type. Talk to us a little bit about what that training pipeline is like. You know, all the way from a young person, man or woman who wants to enter the Army aviation career field to the point where they become a qualified aviator. Walk us through, because I think a lot of folks know what the US, the American model is, but how, talk to us a little bit about the French model.
Yeah, so I would say we have a model, I would say, which is close to the US model. I would say the initial flight course will last 1 year, and then we are qualified on the first helicopter, so EC-120. And afterwards, people are going to get a specialization on a weapon system. And for us, I would say, most of the first phase is made with real flights, but with regard to the, I would say, the training on advanced platforms such as Tiger and NH90, 2/3 of the training is made by simulation. So, and afterwards, we have to develop, I would say, technical, I would say, skills, but also tactical skills through real, I would say, flights and simulation as well. So we have also a tactical simulation to, I would say, as we said earlier, to practice different scenarios or to play different scenarios. So.
Readiness and funding is always a challenge. France has you know, increased defense spending, but there are always some challenge. Domestic concerns also have taken some of that way, because as obviously the counterterrorism missions have been pressure, and there are of course budget pressures also when the Treasury gets involved and says, okay, that was a very ambitious plan in France. For those people who know the French budgeting system, the program, 5-year program law always starts out strong. The always concern is whether the 5th year of the plan will be the same. Talk to us a little bit about readiness resources, but also a retention challenge because pilots are in demand worldwide. It doesn't matter where you are, the demand is such that military aviators are transitioning. So two parts, do you have enough funding and support in order to build that readiness up to the level that you need it to build? Because simulators help, but at the end of the day you have to do some real world operational flying. And on the second part, are you able to retain the pilots that you have spent so many years training because you want them to stay so that they're the Yves Bouillots of the future, or the Jean Bouillaud, excuse me.
So with regard to the resources, we can say that our President of the Republic has increased and the Parliament have increased the budget. So this year we are going to get 35.9 billion euros. So this level amounts to 1.81% of the GDP. So we are, aiming at the 2% by 2025. So this is the first thing. I would say some money will be put on new assets, modernization of the fleet, but I would say also we have, to repair the fleet, and we are going to increase the spending with regard to maintenance in order to maintain the fleet, because I would say after 20 years of operation, it's quite a challenge to keep everything available. And so, for example, for us, we are going to spend for the Army 400 million euros this year, and we are going to get also new types of contract in order to get the repair parts or to outsource flying hours in order to better use our manpower. So this is, I would say, the first thing. With regard to human resources, yes, there is a fierce competition with other operators. For example, with the industry, with, I would say, some commercial lines and so on. So far, we have some shortages. But we try to make sure, we'll try to develop career patterns to make sure that people are happy to stay within the force, and we have always possibilities to have some allowances, extra allowances, but I would say our first goal is to make sure that our career paths remain, attractive for the different people.
And last question, cooperation with the United States. You have a very, very qualified staff officer who is based in Fort Rucker. Talk to us a little bit about cooperation with the U.S. Army, given almost everywhere in the world, French and American troops find themselves together executing missions every day.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing is mainly to see all training opportunities for our officers, for example, when we attend some courses, I would say in the US, but we have also the same thing. We have also American officers attending, for example, the Command and General Staff College in Paris. The second thing is to be able to train together in the field, either in Europe or elsewhere. And afterwards, this is, I'll say, we have also a question of interoperability. So it's nice to discuss doctrinal issues together, and to make sure that also we have a kind of a human interoperability. I would say when we meet for such events like today with a QA. So I would say we have different lines of operation here, if I may say so. And I would say, and for us, it's about sometimes make sure that the equipment can be interfaced, that the people can be interfaced, and also that people can be trained, I would say, on a regular basis, either in Europe or in the US or in the world. So.
French Army Brigadier General Jean Bouillaud, who is the commander of the French Army Aviation School on the French Riviera. Sir, it was an honor and pleasure. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for having me on, and so this was a very interesting opportunity to discuss things with our American friends. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, and look forward to hopefully visiting you in Provence, in Le Luc. It would be a great time.
Our doors are open, and we would be happy to. I would say, show you what we are doing, especially with regard to the training and the simulation and digitalization of the school.
Well, seeing as how I love helicopters, I'd love to be able to get some good French schooling so that one of these days I'll actually be able to fly one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.